The stars looked different from this far out. Park Ji-won pressed his hand against the cold window of the transport ship and stared at the massive structure floating in the darkness ahead. Threshold 9 was bigger than any space station humanity had ever built. The ancient metal gleamed under distant starlight, a reminder that other civilizations had walked among the stars long before humans took their first steps into space. Nervous? Captain Han Myri appeared beside him, her reflection sharp in the window glass. She wore her military uniform with practiced ease, her hand resting near her sidearm out of habit. Ji-won shook his head, though his heart beat faster than normal. Just thinking about what comes next. Everything changes today. It had been 3 months since the Valith Empire made first contact. Their ships had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system without warning, massive vessels that made humanity's best warships look like toys. The panic had lasted exactly 48 hours before the aliens sent their message. They came in peace. They wanted to talk. They wanted to meet. Now Ji-won was here, chosen from thousands of candidates to represent humanity at this first formal meeting. He was a xenobiologist and a trained diplomat, but nothing had truly prepared him for this moment. Ambassador Kang Dae-hoon had coached him for weeks, drilling him on proper protocols and teaching him to read body language and tone. But, how did you read an alien? The transport docked with a soft thud that echoed through the hull. Ji-won's sister Hyun was working somewhere in the engineering section, making sure their ship stayed ready for a quick departure if things went wrong. He wished she was here beside him, making jokes to calm his nerves like she always did. But, she had her job, and he had his. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Ambassador Kang stepped through first, his gray hair perfectly combed and his expression calm. Ji-won followed, then, Captain Myri with a security team of 6 soldiers. Their boots made quiet sounds on the metal floor of Threshold 9. The corridor beyond was vast and empty. Lights flickered to life as they walked, responding to their presence. The station had been abandoned for centuries, left behind by whatever species built it. Now it served as neutral ground, a place where neither humans nor Valith held advantage. They walked for 10 minutes before reaching the meeting chamber. The doors were massive, at least 20 feet tall, covered in symbols no one could read. As they approached, the doors slid open silently. The room inside took Ji-won's breath away. It was circular and enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the stars above through some kind of transparent material. In the center was a round table made of dark stone, with chairs sized for beings much larger than humans. But, someone had added smaller chairs around one half of the table, clearly meant for the human delegation. The Valith were already there. Ji-won had seen pictures and videos, but nothing compared to seeing them in person. They stood on the far side of the chamber, 5 figures in flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with inner light. Their skin had a crystalline quality, with patterns that caught the light and reflected it in strange ways. Their faces were humanoid but distinctly alien, with large eyes that shifted colors like oil on water and fingers that were longer and more delicate than human hands. One of them stepped forward. She was smaller than the others, dressed in robes of deep blue with silver threading. Her crystalline skin patterns formed elegant swirls across her face and hands. Her eyes were a calm blue color as she looked at the human delegation. "I am Princess Era of Valith," she said in perfect English, though her voice had an odd musical quality. "I welcome you to this place of meeting. May our words today build bridges between our peoples." Ambassador Kang bowed slightly, a gesture of respect without submission. "I am Ambassador Kang Dae-hoon of Earth. We are honored by your invitation and grateful for this opportunity." He gestured to his right. "This is Park Ji-won, our specialist in xenobiology and cultural exchange. And Captain Han Myri, commander of our security forces." Princess Era's eyes shifted to a warmer gold color as she looked at each of them in turn. "Please, be seated. We have much to discuss." They moved to the table. Jaiwan noticed that Valith guards stood at attention near the far wall, just as human soldiers stood near the entrance. Everyone was armed. Everyone was watching. The next 2 hours passed in careful conversation. They discussed trade possibilities, cultural exchange programs, and scientific cooperation. Princess Era spoke for the Valith, her voice never wavering, her words chosen with precision. Ambassador Kong matched her, giving nothing away but leaving doors open for future talks. Jaiwan mostly listened and took notes, studying the aliens across the table. He noticed small things. The way their eyes changed color seemed to reflect emotion or intent. Blue for formality, gold for warmth, a darker purple for concentration. Their hands moved gracefully when they spoke, emphasizing points without human gestures. They never touched each other, he realized. Even when passing documents or pointing at the holographic displays hovering above the table, they maintained careful distance. "We should mark this moment," Princess Era said as the formal discussions came to a close. "A gesture of goodwill between our peoples." Ambassador Kong nodded. "What do you propose?" Princess Era stood and walked around the table toward them. The movement caused immediate tension. Human soldiers shifted their weight. Valith guards took a step forward. But the princess held up one hand and everyone froze. "On my world, we mark important agreements with a joining of hands," she said. Her eyes had shifted to a bright silver, though Jaiwan didn't know what that meant. "I understand humans have a similar custom." Jaiwan found himself standing before he fully realized what he was doing. Ambassador Kong looked at him with surprise, but nodded. This was Jaiwan's role, after all. He was the cultural specialist, the one meant to build personal connections. He stepped forward until he stood directly in front of Princess Era. She was slightly taller than him, her crystalline skin catching the starlight from above. Her eyes were now a swirling mix of silver and blue. "We call it a handshake," Jaiwan said quietly. He extended his right hand, palm open, just as he had done thousands of times in his life. Princess Era looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, carefully, she reached out with her own hand. Her fingers were cool and smooth, the crystalline patterns hard under his touch. Their palms met. The moment their skin made contact, Princess Era gasped. Her entire body went rigid. Her eyes flashed from silver to a bright, shocking crimson. She trembled, a violent shaking that ran through her whole frame. Her free hand clutched at her robes as if trying to steady herself. The response was immediate and catastrophic. Valith guards drew weapons, sleek devices that hummed with energy. Human soldiers raised their rifles. Shouts echoed through the chamber in 2 languages. Captain Myri moved to pull Jaiwan back, but he stood frozen, his hand still touching the princess. "Stop!" Princess Era's voice cut through the chaos. She spoke in her own language, rapid words that made the Valith guards hesitate. Then, in English, "Stand down. All of you. Now." The trembling had stopped, but her eyes remained that shocking red color. She pulled her hand away from Jaiwan slowly, as if the movement required great effort. Her breathing was quick and shallow. "Princess, what did he do to you?" One of the Valith officials rushed forward, his own eyes burning orange with what might have been anger. "Nothing," Era said, though her voice shook. "He did nothing wrong. It was unexpected, that is all." But everyone in that room knew something had happened. Something important and dangerous and completely unexplained. The careful diplomacy of the past 2 hours shattered like glass. Ambassador Kong recovered first. "Perhaps we should adjourn for today. Give everyone time to process what occurred." Princess Era nodded, not taking her eyes off Jaiwan. "Yes. That would be wise." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back. "This changes nothing. We will meet again tomorrow. But, as the delegations separated and returned to their ships, Jaiwan knew she was wrong. Everything had changed. He could still feel the touch of her hand, cool and crystalline. He could still see her eyes flashing red, her body trembling as if shocked by electricity. What had he done? And why did it feel like the fate of two civilizations now hung on the answer to that question? Jaiwan watched the footage for the 100th time. The holographic display floated in the center of his quarters on the human ship, showing the moment his hand touched Princess Era's. He slowed it down, watching frame by frame. The instant their skin made contact, her whole body changed. The trembling started immediately, spreading from her hand up through her arm and into her core. Her eyes flashed red so fast it looked like an explosion of color. "You need to sleep," Hyun said from the doorway. His sister had been watching him review the footage for hours now. Her engineering uniform was stained with grease from working on the ship's systems. "I need to understand what happened." Jaiwan rubbed his eyes. They burned from staring at screens for too long. "I did something wrong. I hurt her somehow." Hyun walked over and sat beside him. The medical scans showed nothing. No toxins, no radiation, no pathogens. "You didn't poison her, if that's what you're thinking." "Then, what? Why did she react like that?" Jaiwan closed his fists, remembering the feel of her cool, smooth skin. The Valith guards almost started a war right there in the room. The door chimed. Captain Myri entered without waiting for permission, which meant the news was bad. Her face was tight with tension. "We have a situation. The Valith have sealed their section of the station. No communication in or out. Ambassador Kong is trying to reach their officials, but they're not responding." "Are they leaving?" Jaiwan asked, already knowing the answer would determine everything. If the Valith left now, humanity's first contact would end in failure. There would be no second chance. Unknown. But our sensors show increased activity around their ships. They could be preparing for departure. Myri crossed her arms. Whatever happened yesterday scared them badly. Jaiwan stood and paced the small room. His mind raced through possibilities. A cultural offense? Some Valith taboo he had violated? But Princess Era had suggested the handshake herself. She knew what would happen, or at least suspected. So why agree to it? The communication panel on the wall beeped. All three of them turned to look. The symbol flashing on the screen was Valith script, not human. "That's a direct channel," Hyun said, surprise in her voice. "Someone's trying to reach us on an encrypted line." Myri moved to the panel and accepted the connection. The screen flickered to life, showing a Valith figure in dark robes. Not Princess Era, but someone older, with skin patterns that had faded with age. "I am Counselor Thane," the Valith said in slow, careful English. "I speak without the knowledge of my government. What I say now could bring great trouble to me." "We're listening," Jaiwan said, stepping closer to the screen. "Princess Era has requested a private meeting with Park Jaiwan. Only him. No guards, no witnesses." Thane's eyes were a deep purple, almost black. "This is highly irregular. Dangerous, even. But, she insists." "Why?" Captain Myri's hand moved to her weapon. "What does she want with him?" "That is not for me to say. But, know this, human. If you accept, you walk into territory where we cannot protect you. The princess has power, but there are those among us who believe contact with your kind is a mistake. They would use any excuse to end these talks." The connection ended abruptly, leaving them staring at a blank screen. "It's a trap," Myri said immediately. "They want to isolate you, then blame us when something goes wrong." "Or she genuinely wants to talk," Jaiwan countered. "She needs to explain what happened, and she can't do it with her whole government watching." Hyun shook her head. "This is insane. You'd be alone with an alien who had a violent reaction to touching you. What if it happens again? What if it's worse? Jaiwan thought about Princess Era's face in that moment of contact. The shock, yes. The trembling, certainly. But there had been something else in her expression, something he couldn't name. Not pain. Not fear. Something deeper and more complex. I'm going, he said. It took 3 hours to arrange. Ambassador Khan argued against it. Captain Myri threatened to lock him in his quarters. Hyun tried logic, emotion, and, finally, guilt. But, Jaiwan held firm, and, eventually they gave in. He would meet with Princess Era, but, he would wear medical sensors that transmitted his vital signs back to the ship. Any sign of distress and, Myri's team would breach the meeting room within seconds, diplomatic consequences be damned. The meeting room was smaller than the grand chamber from yesterday. It was deep in the Valith section of Threshold 9, in a part of the station that still had power from the ancient builders. The walls were smooth and dark, and the only light came from panels in the ceiling that glowed with soft blue radiance. Princess Era was already there when Jaiwan arrived. She wore simpler robes than before, pale gray instead of formal blue. Her skin pattern seemed muted in the dim light. Her eyes were a cautious green as she watched him enter. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know this required courage." "I need to understand what happened," Jaiwan said, staying near the door. "Did I hurt you? Was it a cultural violation?" Era shook her head, and he noticed the movement was more human than he expected. "You did nothing wrong. The fault is mine for suggesting the gesture without explaining the consequences." "Then, explain now. Please." She turned away from him, looking at the wall as if gathering her thoughts. "Physical contact is sacred among my people. We do not touch casually. Even family members maintain distance except in moments of deep significance. For royalty, the restrictions are even stricter. I have not touched another person's skin in 17 of your years." "But, you suggested the handshake," Jaiwan said. "You knew it would involve contact." "I thought I was prepared." Her voice was soft now, almost fragile. "I thought the political importance would overcome the physical response. I was wrong." "What response? What happened to you?" Era turned back to face him. Her eyes had shifted to that silver color again, the same shade they had been just before the handshake. "Your people don't know this yet. We kept it from you during negotiations. Human biology is unique in ways you don't understand. Your bioelectric field, the patterns of energy your body produces, it resonates with Valith neural pathways." Jaiwan felt his pulse quicken. "What does that mean?" "It means when a Valith touches a human, we experience something overwhelming. Imagine every nerve in your body firing at once. Imagine feeling connected to another being so completely that you can't tell where you end and they begin. It is not painful, but it is intense beyond description. That is why we don't touch your kind. That is why contact with humans is forbidden." The room was silent for a long moment. Jaiwan tried to process what she had told him. "You're saying humans have some kind of effect on your species? That were dangerous to you?" "Not dangerous. Powerful. Intoxicating." Era took a step closer. "When you took my hand yesterday, I felt everything. Your curiosity, your nervousness, your hope for peace between our peoples. It flooded through me like a wave. I trembled not from pain but from the intensity of the connection." "Does it hurt you? Cause damage?" "No. But, it overwhelms our self-control. It makes us vulnerable. That is why it is forbidden, especially for royalty. We cannot afford to be vulnerable." Jaiwan understood now why the Valith guards had reacted so violently. They thought he had attacked their princess, done something to harm her. But, the truth was stranger and more complicated. "Why tell me this now?" he asked. Why risk meeting alone? Era's eyes shifted to gold, warm and steady. Because hiding the truth will only lead to more misunderstandings. Because I believe our peoples can work through this if we are honest with each other. And, because I need you to know that what happened was not your fault. Your government doesn't want this information shared, do they? No. There are those who fear humans will use this knowledge as a weapon. Others who believe any contact is too dangerous and want to end negotiations immediately. I am fighting to keep the talks alive, but I cannot do it alone. Jaiwan thought about his own government, about the military advisors and politicians who viewed the Valith with suspicion. If they learned about this effect, some would indeed see it as a weapon. Others would see it as proof that aliens were too different, too dangerous to trust. We need to control how this information spreads, Jaiwan said. Present it as scientific discovery, not a vulnerability. You understand politics as well as biology, Era said with something that might have been approval. Yes. We must frame this correctly or lose everything we've worked for. She moved closer, until she stood just a few feet away. This close, Jaiwan could see the intricate details of her crystalline skin patterns, the way they caught and reflected the blue light. Her eyes had returned to that swirling silver and blue mix from yesterday. I have a request, she said quietly. One that may seem strange. What is it? Touch my hand again. Let me experience it while prepared, while knowing what to expect. I need to understand this connection if I am to explain it to my people. Jaiwan hesitated. The medical sensors on his body would record everything. Captain Myri would see his elevated heart rate, would know he was in a situation she considered dangerous. But, he understood what Era was asking. She needed data, needed experience to support her arguments. He extended his hand slowly, palm up. Era looked at it for a long moment, then reached out. Her fingers were trembling slightly before they even made contact. Their hands touched. Era gasped again, but this time she didn't pull away. The trembling spread through her body, but she remained standing, her eyes locked on his. They were bright crimson now, burning with that same intense color from yesterday. But she didn't look afraid. She looked focused, determined. Jaiwan felt nothing unusual from his perspective. Her hand was cool and smooth, the crystalline texture strange but not unpleasant. But he could see what it was doing to her, the way her breath came faster, the way her free hand clenched. After 10 seconds that felt like an hour, she pulled away. Her eyes slowly faded back to purple as she steadied her breathing. Remarkable, she whispered. Absolutely remarkable. I felt your intentions, your sincerity. It is like seeing into your soul. Is it always like that? With any human? I don't know. You are the first I have touched. But, the effect is clear. We must find a way to study this properly, under controlled conditions. She straightened her robes, composing herself. Thank you for trusting me. As Jaiwan left the meeting room and made his way back to human territory, his mind raced with implications. This discovery changed everything about human-Valith relations. But, it also created new dangers. If the wrong people on either side learned about it before proper safeguards were in place, the fragile peace could shatter. He didn't notice the figure watching from the shadows, recording everything on a concealed device. He didn't see the message being transmitted to contacts on both sides of the station, spreading news of the secret meeting. By morning, everyone would know about Princess Era and Park Jaiwan's private encounter. And the interpretations of what it meant would threaten to tear both delegations apart. The message reached Earth before Jaiwan even knew it had been sent. News feeds exploded with footage of him entering the private meeting room with Princess Era. The cameras had caught them through a window, their hands touching, her body trembling. Without context, it looked intimate. Scandalous. Dangerous. Human diplomat in secret meeting with alien princess, the headline screamed. Cultural violation or something more? Earth's representative compromises mission. Jaiwan sat in Ambassador Kang's office watching the coverage spread across every major network. His face burned with anger and embarrassment. Someone had been watching. Someone had wanted this exposed. They're calling you everything from a traitor to an idiot, Kang said, his voice tight. The military council wants you recalled immediately. 3 senators have demanded an investigation into whether you've been compromised. I was gathering information, Jaiwan protested. She explained the biological interaction between humans and Valeth. It's important data. Data you obtained in secret, violating protocol. Kang turned off the displays with a sharp gesture. I defended you. I told them you were doing your job. But, they don't trust the situation anymore. They think the aliens have manipulated you somehow. Captain Myri entered the office without knocking. Her expression was grim. We have a bigger problem. There was an attack in the human sector 2 hours ago. Someone set off an explosive device near the diplomatic quarters. 3 people are dead, including 2 junior ambassadors and a communications officer. The room went cold. Jaiwan stood, his hands shaking. What? How? The device was Valeth technology, Myri said. Preliminary analysis shows it matches their energy weapons. But, it was crude, like someone was trying to copy their methods without fully understanding them. Valeth extremists, Kang said quietly. It was only a matter of time before someone on their side decided contact with humanity was too dangerous. But, something felt wrong to Jaiwan. The timing was too convenient. An attack right after his meeting with Princess Era became public. Right when tensions were already high. Are we sure it was Valeth extremists? Could it be someone trying to frame them? Myri gave him a sharp look. You think this is a setup? That humans killed their own people to justify breaking off talks? I don't know what to think anymore. Jaiwan ran his hands through his hair. But, nothing about this feels right. On the Valeth side of the station, Princess Era faced her own crisis. She stood in the council chamber, a room carved from dark crystal that amplified sound and made every word feel like judgment. 5 senior officials sat in elevated seats, looking down at her with eyes that shifted between orange anger and purple suspicion. You met with the human alone, Counselor Ven said, his voice dripping with contempt. You allowed him to touch you again. You have made yourself vulnerable and brought shame to the royal house. I sought information, Era replied, keeping her voice level. The physical interaction with humans is something we must understand if relations are to continue. Relations should not continue, another counselor snapped. These creatures are dangerous. Look what they've done. Their diplomat seduces you with forbidden contact, then, his people attack our allies in the neutral zones. What attack? Era felt ice in her stomach. A Valeth merchant vessel near the outer rim. Destroyed by what appears to be human weapons. 6 crew members dead. Then leaned forward. And, now we learn of your secret meetings. How convenient that these attacks come just as you compromise yourself with their representative. Era's mind raced. An attack using human weapons at the same time humans were attacked with Valeth technology. The symmetry was too perfect. Someone is manipulating both sides. Creating incidents to drive us apart. Or perhaps the humans are exactly as dangerous as we feared, and you have been blinded by their exotic biology. Lord Kale stepped forward from the shadows. He was Era's cousin, ambitious and cunning. His eyes were a cold blue as he addressed the council. Princess Era has shown herself unable to maintain proper distance from these aliens. She has allowed their touch to affect her judgment. I move that she be removed from the negotiations immediately and that I take her place. The council murmured in agreement. Era felt the ground shifting beneath her. Kale had been waiting for this opportunity, waiting for her to make a mistake he could exploit. The humans are not our enemy, she said firmly. Someone wants us to believe they are, but I have touched Park Ji-won twice now. I have felt his intentions. He means us no harm. You felt what you wanted to feel, Kale said smoothly. The biological response between our species is precisely why contact is forbidden. It clouds judgment. It makes us vulnerable to manipulation. The council will vote, Ven announced. Those in favor of removing Princess Era from the negotiation team and appointing Lord Kale in her place. 3 hands rose. Era watched her position crumble. She had fought so hard to make this alliance work, and now it was slipping away because someone had orchestrated these attacks perfectly. Back on the human ship, Hyun worked late in the engineering section. The rest of the crew was either sleeping or dealing with the aftermath of the attack. She had volunteered to run diagnostics on the communication systems, looking for any damage from the explosion that had rocked the diplomatic quarters. That's when she found it. A data stream that shouldn't exist, encrypted communications bouncing between human and Valith systems. Someone was talking across the divide, coordinating something. The encryption was military grade, far beyond what civilian diplomats would use. She traced the signals back to their source and felt her blood run cold. The communications were coming from multiple points on both sides of the station. Human military personnel. Valith officials. And they were all talking to a third party, someone using routing protocols she didn't recognize. Hyun copied everything she could find and ran to find her brother. She found him in his quarters, staring at the ceiling with exhausted eyes. We have a problem, she said, sealing the door behind her. A big one. She showed him the data. Ji-won's eyes widened as he read through the intercepted communications. They were coded, but the pattern was clear. Someone was coordinating the attacks on both sides. Someone wanted the alliance to fail. This is bigger than extremists, Ji-won said. This is organized. Planned. Look at this. Hyun pointed to a string of numbers. These are routing codes for an independent network. Not human, not Valith. Someone else is involved. They took the information to Ambassador Kong. He listened with growing horror as they explained what Hyun had found. If this is true, then, we've been dancing to someone else's tune since the beginning. The attacks, the leaked footage of your meeting, all of it designed to destroy trust. But, who? Ji-won asked. Who benefits from humans and Valith staying apart? Captain Myri entered with more bad news. The Valith have removed Princess Era from the negotiations. Her cousin Kale is taking over, and his first act was to demand that you, Park Ji-won, be sent back to Earth. He's calling you a security risk. We need to talk to Era, Ji-won said immediately. That's impossible now. The Valith have locked down their section completely. Anyone trying to cross will be considered hostile. Myri paused. And there's worse news. A major peace summit has been scheduled in 3 days. Earth's president and the Valith Emperor are both coming to Threshold 9 to either finalize the alliance or formally end negotiations. Hyun looked at her data with new understanding. That's the target. Whoever is behind this, they're going to strike at the summit. Kill both leaders and make it look like the other side did it. Can you prove that? Kong asked. Not yet. But, if I'm right about this network, I can track their communications. Find out when and where they plan to attack. Hyun's fingers moved over her data pad, already working. I'll need access to the station's main systems. And time. You have 2 days, Myri said. After that, this place will be crawling with security from both sides. If something is going to happen, it will happen at the summit. Ji-won thought about Princess Era, now sidelined and disgraced. He thought about the dead diplomats in the human sector and the destroyed Valith ship. All pieces in someone else's game. We need to get a message to Era. She needs to know what we found. How? Kong asked. The Valith won't accept any communications from us right now. There has to be someone. Someone who wants peace enough to take a risk. Jaiwan remembered Counselor Thane, the old Valith who had arranged the first private meeting. I know someone who might help. But, it's dangerous. Over the next day, tensions continued to rise. More accusations flew between the delegations. Human media painted the Valith as murderous aliens. Valith broadcasts called humans treacherous and violent. Both sides prepared for the summit with the expectation that it would end in failure. But, quietly, carefully, a different conversation was happening. Counselor Thane agreed to pass messages between Jaiwan and Princess Era. They shared information, compared notes on the attacks. The patterns became clear. Every incident was designed to inflame emotions, to make peaceful cooperation seem impossible. Someone is playing both our peoples, Era's message read. They know our weaknesses, our fears. They are using them against us. But, who? Jaiwan wrote back. And, how do we stop them when both our governments think the other side is the enemy? Era's response came after a long delay. We prove them wrong. At the summit, in front of everyone. We show that the connection between humans and Valith is not a weakness but a strength. We expose whoever is trying to tear us apart. That's a huge risk, Jaiwan replied. If we're wrong, we'll look like fools. If we're right but can't prove it, we might start the war they want. Do you have a better idea? He didn't. And time was running out. The summit was tomorrow, and Hyun had traced the mysterious communications to a location somewhere in the old sections of Threshold 9. Equipment was being moved into position. Whatever was planned, it was almost ready. That night, Jaiwan couldn't sleep. He stood at the window of his quarters and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, two civilizations stood on the edge of either alliance or war. And, somehow, impossibly, he and Princess Era were at the center of it all. His hand still remembered the cool touch of her crystalline skin. He wondered if she felt the same strange connection he did, this sense that they understood each other despite being from different worlds. Was it real, or was it just the biological effect she had described? Either way, tomorrow would decide everything. The summit would be their one chance to stop whoever was manipulating both sides. If they failed, the first contact between humans and Valith would end in blood and recrimination. If they succeeded, they might forge a new future for both peoples. But, first, they had to survive whatever was coming. And, Jaiwan had a feeling that the people behind these attacks wouldn't let them expose the truth without a fight. The summit was set to begin in 6 hours. Threshold 9 buzzed with activity as security teams from both sides swept every corridor, checked every room, and monitored every entrance. President Kim of Earth was already docked, his ship surrounded by heavy military escort. The Valith Emperor's vessel was approaching, a massive craft that dwarfed everything around it. But, in a forgotten section of the ancient station, far from the preparations and security sweeps, Jaiwan and Princess Era met in secret one more time. Counselor Thane had arranged it, risking everything to give them this chance. The room was dark and cold, lit only by emergency lights that flickered with old age. Did you find anything? Era asked immediately. Her eyes were bright purple with stress, and she wore a simple gray cloak to avoid being recognized. Jaiwan pulled out a datapad. My sister tracked the communications. There's an organization called the Syndicate, an interstellar group that profits from conflict. They've been operating in this sector for decades, playing different species against each other. I've heard whispers of such a group, Era said. But, I thought they were myths. Stories to scare merchants and traders. They're real. And, they've infiltrated both our governments. Jaiwan showed her the data Hyun had collected. Look at this. General Vorith in your military has been receiving payments. And, on our side, there are 3 officials who show the same pattern. Era studied the information with growing horror. Vorith is one of our most decorated commanders. He has the loyalty of thousands of soldiers. If he's compromised, then, the Syndicate has access to our entire military structure. It's worse than that. Jaiwan pulled up another file. Your cousin, Lord Kale. He's been in contact with Syndicate operatives for months. They promised him your position if he would help sabotage the Alliance. Era closed her eyes. Of course. Kale always wanted power. I should have seen it. She looked up at Jaiwan. But, even with this evidence, who will believe us? Both sides already think the worst of each other. And, if we accuse respected officials without absolute proof, they'll dismiss us as conspiracy theorists. That's why we can't go through normal channels, Jaiwan said. The Syndicate knows we're investigating. They'll move up their timeline. The summit, Era breathed. They're going to attack during the summit. Captain Myri appeared in the doorway, her weapon drawn. Jaiwan tensed until he saw her expression. She wasn't here to arrest them. She was here to help. Your sister found something, Myri said to Jaiwan. There's a weapons cache in Section D7, hidden behind false walls. Valith energy weapons, human explosives, enough firepower to start a war. Can we disable it? Era asked. Already done. But, that was just one cache. Hyun thinks there are more, and, we don't have time to find them all before the summit starts. Myri looked between them. You two need to present your evidence publicly. During the opening ceremony. It's the only way to expose this before people die. They'll never let us speak, Jaiwan said. I've been banned from Valith areas, and, Era has been removed from the negotiations. Then, we make them listen. Era's eyes had shifted to a determined gold. I am still a princess of Valith. I still have some authority. If I interrupt the ceremony and, demand the truth be heard, tradition requires that I be given time to speak. That will end your career, Jaiwan said quietly. Your cousin will use it as proof that you're unfit. The council will strip you of your titles. Perhaps. But, if I stay silent and, both our leaders die, my titles won't matter. Nothing will matter except the war that follows. Era touched Jaiwan's hand briefly, a gesture that made her shiver despite expecting it. We started this together when we shook hands that first day. We'll finish it together. Ambassador Kong found them an hour later. He had aged 10 years in the past week, stress carving deep lines in his face. But, when Jaiwan showed him the evidence, when he explained the plan, Kong nodded slowly. I'll support you. I can't give you an official platform, but, I can make sure you're in the room. After that, it's up to you two. He looked at Princess Era. Your Highness, are you certain about this? Once you speak out, there's no going back. I am certain, Era said. This is bigger than politics or personal ambition. This is about whether our peoples have a future together or destroy each other based on lies. The summit hall was the same grand chamber where Jaiwan and Era had first met. But, now it was transformed, filled with delegates from both sides and heavy security presence. Cameras from both civilizations recorded everything, broadcasting the event to billions of watching citizens. Jaiwan stood with the human delegation in the back of the room. He wore his formal diplomatic uniform, but his credentials had been downgraded. He was officially just an observer now, not a participant. Princess Era was somewhere on the Valith side, hidden among the lesser nobles who had come to witness the summit. President Kim stepped to the podium first, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and a voice that commanded attention. We gather here today to determine the future of human-Valith relations. These past weeks have been marked by tragedy and misunderstanding. We must decide if we can overcome our differences or if we are too alien to ever truly trust one another. The Valeth Emperor spoke next, his voice translated through devices that made it sound melodic and strange. The path to peace is difficult when fear drives our choices. We have seen violence and suspicion. We must choose whether to let these incidents define us or whether to reach for something better. It was all very diplomatic, very careful. Both leaders were positioning themselves to walk away if necessary, to end the talks without appearing weak or foolish. Jaiwan felt his heart sink. This was going exactly as the syndicate wanted. Then, Princess Era stood. She moved forward from the Valeth delegation, her robes flowing behind her. Voices rose in surprise and confusion. Lord Kale tried to stop her, reaching for her arm, but she pulled away and continued toward the center of the chamber. "I invoke the right of truth," she said in her own language, her voice carrying across the vast room. The Emperor's eyes widened. This was ancient tradition, rarely used, but absolute. When someone invoked the right of truth before the Emperor, they had to be heard. "I have knowledge of a conspiracy that threatens both our peoples. I demand the right to speak." The Emperor had no choice. "Speak, then. But, know that false accusations made under the right of truth carry severe penalties." Era turned to face both delegations. "What I am about to reveal will shock you. Some will call me traitor. Others will say I am compromised. But, I speak truth, and I have evidence." Jaiwan moved forward as she spoke. Security tried to stop him, but Ambassador Kong nodded and they let him pass. He walked to stand beside Era in the center of the room, human and Valeth together under the eyes of both civilizations. "There is an organization called the Syndicate," Era continued. "They profit from conflict between species. They have infiltrated our governments and orchestrated attacks on both sides to prevent this alliance from forming." The room erupted in shouts. Lord Kale stepped forward, his eyes blazing orange. "This is madness. The princess has been seduced by human contact. She sees conspiracies where there is only the natural distrust between our peoples." "I have proof," Jaiwan said, his voice cutting through the noise. He held up a data pad. "Communications, financial records, personnel files. General Voreth of the Valeth military has been working with syndicate operatives. So have 3 of our own officials." "Lies," General Voreth's voice boomed from the Valeth delegation. He was a massive figure in ceremonial armor, his skin patterns dark with anger. "I have served the Empire for 40 years. I will not be slandered by a human and a foolish girl." "Then, explain these payments," Era said, pulling up the financial records on holographic displays that appeared throughout the chamber. "Explain why you have been in contact with known syndicate agents. Explain why weapons caches were found in sections you personally inspected and approved as secure." Voretha's eyes shifted from orange to a dangerous red. "This is forgery. Human manipulation." But other voices were rising now. Moderate Valeth officials who had seen the evidence Era had shared with them beforehand. Human intelligence officers who had been conducting their own quiet investigations. The truth was coming out, piece by piece, undeniable in its detail. "There's more," Jaiwan said. He looked directly at Lord Kale. "Your cousin has been promised the throne if the alliance fails. The Syndicate wants a Valeth leader who will maintain isolation and continue the conflicts they profit from." Kale's face twisted with rage. "I will not listen to this human speak lies about me. Guards, remove him from this chamber." But the guards didn't move. Too many people were watching now, too many questions being asked. President Kim stepped down from the podium and took the datapad from Jaiwan, studying the evidence herself. The Valeth Emperor did the same with Era's data. "If these accusations are true," the Emperor said slowly, "then, we have been manipulated like children playing at war games. The violence, the deaths, all orchestrated to keep us apart. They wanted to attack here today," Era said. "Kill both you and President Kim, make it look like the other side was responsible. Start a war that would destroy both our peoples and leave the Syndicate to profit from the ruins. General Vorith moved suddenly, faster than anyone expected. He pulled a weapon from beneath his armor, a sleek device that hummed with deadly energy. He aimed it at the Emperor, his face twisted with desperation. "Fools," he snarled. "All of you. This alliance would destroy everything we've built. Humans are beneath us. They're primitive, violent, dangerous. Better to end this now." Captain Myri's team moved, but they were too far away. The weapon charged, light building in its core. Jaiwan saw it happening as if in slow motion. Voritha's finger on the trigger. The Emperor standing frozen, unable to believe one of his own generals had betrayed him. Jaiwan didn't think. He threw himself forward, colliding with Vorith just as the weapon discharged. Energy seared past them, burning a hole in the far wall. They hit the ground hard, Voritha's armor crushing the air from Jaiwan's lungs. But, human soldiers and Valith guards were rushing forward now, pulling them apart, securing the general. Princess Era knelt beside Jaiwan, her hands hovering over him but not touching, careful even now. "Are you hurt?" He coughed, struggling to breathe. "I'm fine. Just bruised." Around them, chaos erupted. More weapons were drawn as other Syndicate operatives revealed themselves, knowing their plan had failed but trying to cause as much damage as possible. Human and Valith security fought side by side, protecting the leaders from both civilizations. Lord Kale tried to flee but was caught at the entrance. 3 human officials attempted to destroy evidence on their datapads but were stopped by their own security teams. The conspiracy was unraveling, exposed under the glaring lights of both civilizations' media. It took an hour for order to be restored. When the chamber finally quieted, bodies lay scattered across the floor, a mix of Syndicate operatives and security personnel from both sides who had died protecting the summit. The cost had been high, but the truth was undeniable now. President Kim and the Valith Emperor stood together at the center of the room, surveying the damage. Then, the Emperor did something unprecedented. He extended his hand to the human president, mimicking the gesture that had started everything. "I believe we have much to learn from each other," he said. President Kim took his hand carefully, and, though the Emperor trembled slightly at the contact, he didn't pull away. They shook hands as cameras captured the moment, a symbol of alliance forged through crisis and truth. Jaiwan and Princess Era watched from the side of the chamber. They had exposed the conspiracy, stopped the attack, and possibly saved both their peoples. But the cost to both of them personally would be enormous. Jaiwan's career was likely over. Era would face severe consequences for her actions, regardless of being right. Was it worth it? Jaiwan asked quietly. Era's eyes were a peaceful blue as she looked at him. "Yes. Whatever comes next, we did the right thing." And, in that moment, watching 2 civilizations begin to truly come together, Jaiwan believed her. The interrogation of General Vorith lasted 3 days. He broke on the 2nd day, providing names and locations of Syndicate operations throughout both human and Valith space. Lord Kale was more stubborn, but the evidence was overwhelming. Both faced execution under their respective legal systems, though the Valith Emperor commuted Kale's sentence to permanent exile out of consideration for the royal family. Jaiwan sat in a medical bay while a doctor examined the bruises covering his ribs and back. Tackling an armored Valith general had not been his brightest moment, but the Emperor was alive because of it. That had to count for something. "You're lucky nothing broke," the doctor said, applying a healing gel that tingled against Jaiwan's skin. "Another few centimeters and that armor would have crushed your sternum." "I'll try to avoid wrestling aliens in the future," Jaiwan said with a weak smile. Ambassador Kong entered the medical bay, his expression impossible to read. "Well, you've managed to do something I've never seen in 40 years of diplomacy." You've become a hero on Earth and the Valeth homeworld simultaneously. I was just trying not to let anyone get killed. And you succeeded. The summit continued after order was restored. President Kim and Emperor then signed the Threshold Accords this morning. Full diplomatic relations, scientific exchanges, trade agreements, and a joint task force to hunt down the remaining syndicate cells. Kong sat down heavily. You did it, Jaiwan. You and Princess Era. You gave us peace. What about the biological effect? Jaiwan asked. The way humans and Valeth react to each other. It's being studied openly now. Researchers from both sides are excited. Apparently, the neural resonance goes both ways. Valeth feel the intense connection when they touch humans, but humans also experience subtle effects. Enhanced empathy, better ability to read Valeth emotions. It's being called interspatial biology, and you're being credited as the first to document it. Jaiwan thought about touching Princess Era's hand, about the strange feeling of understanding her despite their differences. Maybe it hadn't been just his imagination. What happens to Era? Her cousin tried to overthrow the Emperor. The council won't forget that she defied them. Kang's expression softened. That's the interesting part. The Emperor himself intervened. He declared her a hero of the Empire for exposing the conspiracy. She's being elevated, not punished. They're talking about making her the official liaison for all human-Valeth relations. Hope flared in Jaiwan's chest. And, me? Am I being sent back to Earth? Quite the opposite. You're being appointed as Earth's first permanent ambassador to the Valeth homeworld. If you want the job, that is. Kong smiled. I know it's not what you signed up for when you joined the diplomatic corps. Living on an alien world, surrounded by a species we barely understand. But, you've proven you can build bridges where others saw only walls. Jaiwan didn't need to think about it. I accept. The Valeth homeworld was called Ethel, a name that meant, eternal light, in their language. The planet orbited a blue star, and its cities were built from the same crystalline materials that made up Valeth's skin. Under the blue sunlight, everything shimmered and reflected, creating a world that looked like it was made of living jewels. Jaiwan's new residence was in the capital city of Helion, near the palace complex. It was a human-style building, one of the first constructed on Ethel, designed to accommodate Earth's atmosphere and gravity requirements. But the windows were pure Valeth crystal, and the view showed the sprawling alien city in all its strange beauty. Princess Era visited him on his third day on Ethel. She wore formal robes of gold and silver, marking her new position as chief liaison to humanity. Her eyes were a warm amber color as she looked around his home. Is it comfortable? She asked. We tried to make it suitable for human habitation, but we are still learning your requirements. It's perfect, Jaiwan said honestly. The building felt like a blend of both worlds, neither fully human nor fully Valeth, but something new. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure if you'd have time, with your new responsibilities. I will always have time for you, Era said simply. You risked your life to save my emperor. More than that, you risked your reputation and career to tell the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. That is something my people value deeply. They sat in the main room, carefully maintaining distance out of habit. But, Jaiwan noticed that Era seemed more relaxed now, less worried about maintaining perfect control. I've been reading about the research, Jaiwan said. The scientists say the human-Valeth connection could revolutionize how we understand consciousness and neural function. Yes. And, it's already changing how my people view physical contact. For so long, we avoided touch because it made us vulnerable. But, perhaps vulnerability is not always weakness. Perhaps it is how we truly connect with others. Era's eyes shifted to that swirling silver and blue that Jaiwan had come to recognize as her thinking color. May I try something? Of course. Era extended her hand across the space between them. Jaiwan took it without hesitation. She trembled as always, that full-body reaction to the neural resonance between their species. But, this time she smiled through it, her eyes bright crimson but happy. "I can feel your curiosity," she said quietly. "Your hope for the future. Your nervousness about living on a new world. It's remarkable. Like reading emotions as clearly as you would read words on a screen." "What else do you feel?" Jaiwan asked, genuinely curious. Era was quiet for a moment, her hand steady in his despite the trembling. "Loneliness. You miss your sister. You miss Earth, even though you chose to come here. You worry about whether you'll be able to truly help our peoples understand each other." She squeezed his hand gently. "But, underneath all of that, there is determination. You believe in this alliance. You believe we can make it work." "I do believe that," Jaiwan said. "Because I've seen what we can accomplish when we work together. We stopped a conspiracy, prevented a war, and built something new." Era released his hand and sat back, her eyes slowly fading back to purple. "The Council wants to establish cultural exchange programs. Send Valeth students to study on Earth, bring human scholars here to Ethel. They want you to help design the programs. I'd be honored. But, I'll need help from your side. Someone who understands both Valeth culture and the challenges of integration." "I hoped you would say that. I've already volunteered to work with you on the project." Era smiled, a gesture that looked slightly awkward on her crystalline features but was unmistakably warm. "We make a good team, Park Jaiwan. You and I. Perhaps that is what the universe intended when it made our species compatible in such an unusual way." Over the following months, Jaiwan and Princess Era became fixtures in both human and Valeth media. They appeared together at conferences, gave joint interviews, and worked tirelessly to build the frameworks for real integration between the two civilizations. The biological effect became less of a scandal and more of a curiosity, something that symbolized the unique bond forming between humans and Valeth. Hyun visited Jaiwan 6 months after he took up residence on Ethel. She brought news from Earth and stories about life in the expanding diplomatic corps. But, mostly, she came to see how her brother was adapting to life on an alien world. "You look happy," she said as they walked through the crystal gardens near Jaiwan's home. The plants here were unlike anything on Earth, growing in geometric patterns and pulsing with bioluminescence as night fell. "I am happy," Jaiwan admitted. "It's strange and challenging, but it feels right. Like this is what I was supposed to be doing all along." "And the princess? You two seem close." Jaiwan felt his face heat. "We're colleagues. Friends. The work requires us to spend a lot of time together." Hyun laughed. "You always were terrible at hiding your feelings. Just be careful, okay? You're building something important here. Both personally and politically." A year after the summit, the first joint human Valeth colony was established on a neutral world. It was called Harmony, and both species sent settlers to live and work together. The colony faced challenges, cultural misunderstandings and biological incompatibilities that required creative solutions. But it survived, and then it thrived, becoming a symbol of what the alliance could achieve. Jaiwan was there for the dedication ceremony, standing beside Princess Era as both governments celebrated this new chapter. President Kim gave a speech about human determination and the courage to reach across the void. Emperor then spoke of the Valeth tradition of finding strength through unexpected connections. When the ceremony ended and the crowds dispersed, Jaiwan and Era stood together watching the sun set over Harmony's crystalline structures. The architecture blended human and Valeth designs, creating something that belonged fully to neither species and perfectly to both. "Do you remember the first day we met?" Era asked quietly. "When you extended your hand and I didn't know what would happen. I remember, Jaiwan said. I thought I had done something terrible. Started an incident that would end any chance of peace. Instead, you started something better. A connection that neither of us understood but both of us needed. Era turned to face him. In my culture, there is a word. Theanu. It means a bond that transcends understanding, a connection that simply exists because it must. I think that is what we have, Park Jaiwan. A Theanu between not just us, but between our peoples. I like that, Jaiwan said. Though I'll probably mispronounce it forever. Era laughed, a sound like crystal bells that still caught him off guard. You will try, and that is what matters. That is what your people do. You try, even when it's difficult. Even when you might fail. That is humanity's greatest strength. She extended her hand in a human gesture that had become their tradition. Jaiwan took it without hesitation, and, though Era trembled as always, she no longer seemed afraid of the sensation. They stood together as the alien sun painted the sky in colors Earth had never seen, two representatives of different worlds holding hands and believing in a future neither could fully imagine. 3 years after first contact, the Interspatial Biology Research Center opened on Threshold 9. Scientists from both civilizations worked to understand the unique connection between humans and Valith. They discovered that the effect could be enhanced through training, allowing for deeper communication and understanding between the species. Some researchers believed it might even be possible for humans and Valith to develop a form of shared consciousness through extended contact. But the most important discovery was simpler. When humans and Valith worked together, when they touched and connected and shared their unique perspectives, they accomplished things neither species could achieve alone. New technologies, new art forms, new ways of thinking about ancient problems. Jaiwan became the leading advocate for what he called contact diplomacy, the practice of using the biological connection to build trust and understanding. He trained a generation of human diplomats to work with Valith partners, teaching them to embrace the vulnerability that came with the neural resonance rather than fear it. Princess Era did the same on the Valith side, helping her people understand that the human touch was not a weakness to avoid but a tool for building true connection. She published papers on interspatial empathy and gave lectures across the empire about the importance of embracing the unknown. They continued to work together, their partnership becoming legendary in both civilizations. Some whispered about romance, but Jaiwan and Era never confirmed or denied such speculation. What they had was deeper than labels, a bond forged in crisis and strengthened through years of shared purpose. On the 5th anniversary of the Threshold Accords, a ceremony was held on Earth to celebrate the alliance. Jaiwan stood before the assembled delegates from both worlds and thought about how far they had come. From the moment his hand touched Princess Era's and she trembled, setting off a chain of events that could have ended in war. Instead, it had led to this, to peace and cooperation and genuine friendship between two species. Humanity is defined by our willingness to reach out, Jaiwan said in his speech. Even when we're afraid. Even when we don't fully understand what we're reaching toward. 5 years ago, I extended my hand to an alien princess, and she trembled. Neither of us knew what it meant. But we chose to find out together. We chose curiosity over fear, cooperation over suspicion. And, in doing so, we built something neither of our species could have created alone. Princess Era stepped forward to add her own words. The Valith have always been cautious, careful to maintain control and avoid vulnerability. But, Park Jaiwan taught us that true strength comes from opening ourselves to connection, even when it makes us tremble. Even when it scares us. That is the gift humanity has given us, and it is one we will treasure for generations to come. They shook hands before the cameras and crowds, and, though Era still trembled at the contact, neither of them looked away. They stood together as symbols of what their peoples had become, not human or Valith, but something new and stronger, forged through the simple act of reaching across the void and saying, "Let us try to understand each other." That night, as celebrations continued around them, Jaiwan and Era found a quiet moment alone on a balcony overlooking Earth's night sky. The city lights spread out below them like stars brought down to the ground. "Do you think the syndicate is truly gone?" Era asked. "Or will there always be those who profit from division and fear?" "There will always be challenges," Jaiwan admitted. "Always people who want to tear down what others build. But, we've proven that cooperation is possible. That understanding can overcome suspicion. That's not nothing." Era's eyes were a peaceful gold in the dim light. "No. That is everything." She paused, then added quietly, "Thank you, Park Jaiwan. For being brave enough to shake my hand that first day. For not giving up when everything seemed impossible. For showing both our peoples what we could become if we simply chose to try." "Thank you for trembling and not pulling away," Jaiwan replied with a smile. "For trusting me enough to try again. For believing that the connection between us could mean something bigger than either of us alone." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge as Earth's sky darkened. Two representatives of different worlds, united by a simple handshake that had changed everything. And, in that moment, despite all the challenges still ahead, both of them knew with absolute certainty that the alliance would endure. Because humanity had proven what it meant to be human, to reach out, to connect, to build bridges even when the gap seemed impossible to cross. And, the Valith had proven themselves worthy partners, willing to embrace vulnerability and trust in the promise of something better. Together, they would face whatever came next. Together, they would build a future neither species could have imagined alone. And it all started with a handshake and a trembling alien princess who chose curiosity over fear. The stars shone down on them both, human and Valith together, and the universe seemed to approve.